Alright guys, HyDra back again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. It's that time of year again when the Friendship League starts to come under the spotlight. Envoy suggesting that at this point in the Rostermania period, it's all about the friendships you have as to whether you're going to get a spot in the league. And especially looking at some of the teams that are rumoured to be formed right now, you can totally understand where he's coming from. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. First of all, thought this is called for OpTic Day. So this is coming up in a couple of days now. 14th of August. Come 1v1 Scump for $1,000. Now, if this was Scump's own $1,000, he would be going so hard, I wouldn't even believe, because we know that Scump doesn't like to spend a penny more than he has to. But this does remind me a little bit of what used to happen back at, I remember Anaheim 2019 that I went to. They used to have these sections where they would get, I think it was Nameless that event, but they would get casters or something like this, just former pros, to 1v1 people, and if you beat them, you won a TV, I think was what the game was at that time. And people thought, oh, Nameless, he's been retired for a couple of years. This is Black Ops 4. So Nameless, I think, had been out for a little while at that point. And I know a lot of people thought, oh, I'll smoke this guy, like no problem at all. And Nameless is just battering people down, no issues. I think he did get beaten a couple of times, so he did have to give away a couple of TVs. But it was a fun little game that used to be played alongside the, well, hopefully they can bring that back maybe at one future tournament. But yeah, I don't know what game this is, because they don't say. They give the time, they give the date, but you know, 7:30, Dallas, Texas, all this at the Central Time, but they don't say what game. So you know, if it's like if you can choose the game, then sure, you might have a good chance. If it's Scump just playing you on, you know, Advanced Warfare, then good luck, right? 1v1 give on that. So I don't exactly know what this is, but if you guys are local, then it might be an interesting one to check out and give it a go, I suppose. This also quickly for Methods, who you know, mentions, and he's talked about this a lot on stream lately, it's got to be said, about what he might do in the future with regard to this. Been thinking a lot about February the 5th, maybe a little too much, of course. This was the day that he officially retired from Call of Duty, and he's made his thoughts known since then on stream over the last couple of weeks about, oh, well, you know, I don't think he made a mistake at all. The timing made sense, I think, for him to step away, and I don't think he regrets it, but I think he does miss competing, and has made the point that he does want to have some sort of return to challenges this year, even if it's only at the start of the season, playing the early tournaments with, you know, maybe you get Octane, you get Zuma, you get +1 or something, get Enable in there, just have a good time playing the early tournaments, or get Karma involved would be a pretty good one as well, because Karma always kills it in these early tourneys. But even after that concludes and the game starts from the CDL perspective, would Methods look to stay around in some sort of challengers team? Because we've seen in the past, for example, Texas Nation was not the official OpTic substitute team, but OpTic General was their substitute during the Vanguard season, and his challengers team with like Havoc and Kismet and like, was it aBeZy, I think was the team before that they had going on there. They won quite a lot that year at the start, like the middle part of that game, before Kismet then got signed and all this stuff happened in the middle of the year, and General was brought into the starting team, right, with all the chaos that happens with Illy's thumb injury. But that wasn't like the official OpTic Academy, but they kind of just called themselves Texas Nation because they were, you know, General was on the team and he was the sub, but it wasn't like an officially, you know, it wasn't OpTic Nation, right? It wasn't quite OpTic Nation, it was Texas Nation, and OpTic Nation was a team that was around way back in the day, which kind of was like the second OpTic team in, let's say, Advanced Warfare and stuff like this. So, and I know that Hex has said that the Challengers ecosystem just, it makes sense, absolutely. It just isn't structured in a way that it actually makes financial sense for teams to really invest in, especially OpTic to invest in. But if Methods really pushes for it and says, look, I'll play on an OpTic Nation kind of Challengers Academy team, then it could be a lot of fun. Speaking of OpTic as well, I thought this stat was pretty wild that Jake Maverick puts on Twitter here. So the only team, now this makes sense, right? OpTic are the only team in the CDL era to have a winning record against Atlanta FaZe. But the extent to which their winning records, like what it looks like, compared to the next best is actually crazy. And you look at this and you think, are you sure this isn't a mental block? Because it might well be. So the next best team against FaZe of all the teams is Thieves with a 6-10 record. So they win 38% of the series they play against FaZe so far. That's the best that any team has ever done against FaZe, apart from OpTic. if you consider Huntsman, Chicago Huntsman, OpTic Chicago, and OpTic Texas, they're 13-4 combined. So, like, their win rate, OpTic, against, and including Huntsman, against FaZe, is double what any other team has done. Which is crazy to think about, given the fact that OpTic, it's not like they've won more events than Thieves, or, you know, Thieves are world champions, they've won more events than OpTic have over the last couple of seasons, but still, like, against FaZe, they just have their number, and it's going to remain a really interesting storyline for the upcoming season. Let's talk Friendship League though, because we discussed HyDra yesterday, and it seems to have been confirmed now by more people that, yeah, HyDra's not getting a spot for next year. As I said yesterday, it's possible that London and Vegas and these teams decide their rosters so far down the line that HyDra still gets an opportunity, as MettalZ said, you know, honestly disturbing, and yeah, expected out of the Lion Man League. Now, is it a Lion Man card league? Is it a Friendship League? Now, we got Bance and, you know, of course, they were on Toronto together. As I said yesterday, right, Bance and HyDra are in some sense such similar players. They're somewhat like enablers for really talented players around them as far as I'm concerned, so I don't really think you can have them on the same team together unless one of them would change roles, which is, I suppose, possible, but even Jake Hale discusses this and says, like, the HyDra situation proves, perhaps beyond what it has ever been proved in recent memory, that role players such as HyDra are not only essential to a team's success, but also massively disrespected when it comes to building the strongest team. Now, I think there was some really interesting discussion on this, and I saw some analysis on Reddit that I thought was really insightful, which is something of a rarity, but I think it was the point that I was trying to get across yesterday, is that HyDra, for a team like Toronto, was the perfect guy. They were struggling in the middle of the season with Standy, they needed a replacement there, and HyDra came in, and I think the term that was used that I saw was like, he's a multiplier, so he takes their current players, CleanX, Insight, Scrappy, very good players, and helps them become even better, facilitates their play, and elevates them to the next level. Very valuable player for a team in that position. The thing is though with HyDra, you know, does he shoot as straight as Envoy does? Is he, you know, if Envoy can do that same thing and improve his teammates and just individually drop more numbers and is a world champion and all this type of stuff, then Envoy's going to come in for HyDra, sure. But then you think, all right, well, why doesn't HyDra get on a worse team, right? A, you know, top 8 team or something in that caliber? But then you find the issue that, let's say you're a team like, you know, Minnesota Rocker, for example. You've got Accuracy, you've got Awakening, and you've got maybe Lins or maybe Vivid or something, and you're looking for +1. Is HyDra the best guy to bring in there? Because you bring HyDra into that team, he's still going to drop arguably similar numbers to what he did on Toronto, but his teammates aren't as good as they were on Toronto. So, you know, even if he improves his teammates by 20%, then that's not as impactful for when he improves better teammates by 20%. So it's like, if you're a top team, players like HyDra can be really valuable. Like, top 4 teams, I think HyDra can step into and actually potentially improve if they're having issues. But if you put HyDra on the worst team in the league with limited firepower compared to the rest of the teams, it might actually be better for that team to just sign a player that has more slaying, because that's kind of what they need at that point. So maybe that's one way to look at the situation with HyDra, that certain players will prove to be very good on top teams, but on lower tier teams that are trying to find a way to get better, there actually might be other options. So I can see why GMs make the decision they make, basically, even if I don't always think they're the best decisions, especially when it becomes to the whole Friendship League discussion. Envoy talked about this and said that when it comes to forming rosters, after you've got the best players signed, now it's about the relationships you have. If HyDra was like, had really strong relationships with a load of these players, I think he'd be on a team. And we certainly see that with the Seattle Surge.
I don't know, all the teams look really solid. It just comes down to the weekend, or, you know, once we get there, how the game is, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you talk about all the teams looking solid. I think about 5 are looking solid. The other 7, I guess maybe you add in the Heretics. We don't really know. We say it every podcast. I don't know where you build, how you build. I don't know what the other 6 are going to look like.
Yeah.
It's
feels like
gonna
we
be a
lost
weird year.
This where some of the friendship shit comes in. No cap.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
what do you call it? The tier kind of shrunk, right? Like you used to have kind of sort of 4 powerhouse sort of teams. Like with Thieves breaking up, it's sort of become like these 3, you know, like Ultra FaZe and OpTic,
Well, in New York.
kind of like your
Yeah,
top
New York.
teams in New York. Yeah, I wonder who's
That's what
gonna
I mean.
I wonder who's gonna like fill the void, because somebody always kind of rises up. Like who it's gonna.
Yeah, someone will rise up. One of those teams may not perform. Then like, but the rest are literally you are gonna have some weird looking teams. Like that's just the way.
In New York, though,
Yeah.
New York's making a change. Like they were good at one game. Like I don't know. Like they should be good, but I don't know if I have them. I'm not. They don't have first in my power rankings going into week 1.
It's gonna be weird. We might see a lot of like EU rookies coming in for the first time in a while, like picked up at the beginning of the season. So obviously people are just speculating on like the players, but maybe the first time in a while we've had a lot of EU rookies join the scene again.
We're not playing maps.
So this debate always comes up every so often, right? Every year or so, every few months really, we're talking about the Friendship League. And some players and coaches have said, look, the Friendship League doesn't exist. For example, when Dallas dropped Hook, it was like not easy for them. They were great friends with Hook for sure, but they thought it was in their best interest to get rid of him. So it's not always a Friendship League, but I think it is a Friendship League in some respect in terms of getting the spots in the first place. When it comes to some of the rosters, I mean, honestly, Thieves, despite Nadeshot saying in 2022 that there was not a Friendship League, LA Thieves during Cold War was like peak Friendship League, to be honest. The fact that they brought John back, and no disrespect to John, he was a great player, great champion, 2016 Envy world champion, but the fact that they brought John back into Thieves like at the end of Cold War when he was like not a good player at that time, let's be honest. And it was only really done because, he was friends with Slasher and JCap and all this type of stuff. Like, I think that was the main reason. So, Friendship Leagues definitely do exist. And when it comes to building teams such as, you can look at Heretics, for example, as well, I suppose, just because they want to get the Spanish guys that actually get on. And you can look at some of the other teams as well. The key example, I would say, lately, and I know that I don't have the Seattle Surge roster listed here, but that's this one, right? If relationships didn't matter, and to be honest, I'm not saying that they shouldn't matter. I think that they actually do. And as Kenny has made the point recently, he wants that OpTic Texas team to be a unit. He wants them to be good friends in and out of the game. And that's going to help them be better in the game if they're good friends out of the game. It does matter, having those relationships, having that chemistry is and can be important. And if you form a team of 4 random players that should be good on paper, but you have no idea if they're actually going to work or the chemistry is going to clash or anything, that might not be as good than forming a team that the guys are going to get on well, they're going to try hard for each other, and even if theoretically the roster isn't as good as it could be, you're going to get some benefit from that. But, Seattle might have taken it one step too far because Rambo's the coach, Hook is there, Illy's there, this is the current rumour, and that's a nice tight-knit unit, they've had success in the past, I get it for sure. aBeZy, no necessarily existing relationships with these guys, but still a very talented challenger player, bring him in. It's the Arstees thing, and I think Arstees is a good player, right? And I think that he does deserve a spot on a CDL team somewhere. But I don't know if it's here, just because is this only happening? We talked about the roles, right? We talked about Octane saying, what are they thinking here? It doesn't make any sense. And I agree, it doesn't really make much sense. And it does seem to me that Arstees is coming along for the ride because he got on really well with Illy, right? Illy and Arstees, they wanted to team up for some time, and now the opportunity is there. And instead of getting another player in this situation, instead of having aBeZy, Illy on your ARs, who can then maybe Standy or Near or one of these other SMG candidates on the SMG alongside Hook, they're not doing that. They're bringing Arstees in, and even though I don't think on paper this roster is as good as one that I just mentioned, but, maybe they're going to get some benefit from having that teamwork. But often this doesn't really work like this. It's like last season, Los Angeles Grillers. Arstees, Hook, Neptune, wasn't it? The team of 3 that they started forming because they wanted to play with each other. It just wasn't good, was it? I mean, you can want to play with each other all you like, but if you're trash, then it's not going to help. So, I'm not saying Seattle will be trash, but I don't think they'll be good. So do you think Envoy's right on this one? Because I certainly am inclined to agree that at this time in the season, when those rosters are being formed, the relationships you have, like Arstees' friendship with Illy, goes a long way here, I think, in terms of making that roster happen. And, it's not always necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely interesting to at least contemplate. And Donny Tempo, we discussed yesterday that he might be having a difficult time getting a spot in the CDL. Part of that might be that, the last couple of years he's played with a lot of guys on Paris and Vegas and these type of teams, and maybe he just doesn't quite have the, the friendships and the relationships on some of the teams that should be better for him to actually get a good spot. I mean, if you look at this, Round 11 stats, best S&D 1v1 win percentage on the most recent title, Temp won 11 out of his 12 1v1s. Then you've got Skyz, Scrappy, Slasher, of course, is always going to be here, like he's ridiculously good at Surge, 8 out of 11 he's won, but Nasty's here as well. So, Temp, 92% of his 1v1s he won in the most recent recent season. Very impressive, but might start the year in challenges as it presently stands. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.